My granddaughter married a soldier in Special Forces. And
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. A couple of housekeeping matters. We have some emergency exits to my right and left. There's also some exits, presumably where you came in. There's restrooms out in the lobby area. If you haven't done so already, there's an attendance sheet. Please sign in. If you are an applicant or if you are coming up to speak for or against the application, we ask that you tell us who you are and where you reside so we can keep a record. On that note, Amber over here is keeping our records and creates minutes for us. And it would be extremely helpful if whomever is talking, you wait for the person to be finished talking. We'll wait for you to be finished talking. What we're trying to create is also not talking over each other, because when we look at the minutes, it's difficult to figure out, well, I shouldn't say we, Amber, sometimes it's difficult for her to figure out who's talking. So let's not make her job any more difficult than it already is. Other pieces, that if you have an exhibit that's already submitted and it's up on the board, then certainly tell us which one that you're looking at. Use descriptive language. It's going to be difficult, again, in the minutes if you say, well, if you notice over here and over there, that doesn't translate very well when you're reading minutes. Use compass directions, structures, roads, whatever descriptive wording you can use would be great. If you have additional exhibits, let us know. It wasn't submitted to the packet, or this is something new. Give us a moment. We'll mark it. I'll put my initials on it. We'll put it into the record and just let us know, is it new or old. Business cards are out in the back. There should normally be a proposed resolution, but in this case, we have to send it to the county planning board. So we're not going to be able to make any decisions tonight. What that generally means is the county planning board, because of its proximity to County Road 9, gets to weigh in on their opinions about what we should do. Doesn't mean we have to listen to them, but there's some certain procedural rules that we have to follow. Other things, if you haven't done so already, please turn off your cell phones or silence them. If you have a conversation that needs to take place and it doesn't pertain to the immediate application, please take it out in the hallway and so as not to disturb everybody else. With that, next thing we need to do is approval of minutes. January 16th, 2024. I recall. Larry, did you have a couple of thoughts or changes?
Yes, I think
Okay.
Amber's incorporated that.
All right, did everyone have a chance to look at those proposed changes? And if so, if you were in agreement with it, then great, we can make a motion for the approval of minutes with amendments. If you want to discuss it, we certainly can do that before a motion is had. We're all good with the proposed changes? Yes, I'm seeing nods and no opposition. Great. So I would entertain a motion for approval of the January 16th, 2024 minutes.
Motion.
Thank you, Leah. Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Great. So the Portland application, this is a use variance request. Who's making the presentation? Come on up.
So my name is Melanie Portland, and I live at the Springdale Farms Bed and Breakfast on Victor Egypt Road. And my husband and I bought the property about 3 years ago from Eileen Cash, who ran the business as a bed and breakfast and a wedding venue very successfully in Victor for a number of years, I think 13 years. And since we've been there, we've been updating it and working with the town to get things in code. And we do understand that the barns are not suitable for using as a wedding venue due to code regulations that would be out of our budget to repair or to put into place. So we're just in the beginning phases of starting this business, so we want to work with the town and our neighbors to make sure that we do everything to make this a great place for everybody. And we're hoping that we could have you guys look at a variance to give us permission to put up a tent instead of using the barns, as Eileen did for weddings and events. And we're aiming for small events that aren't going to disrupt the area too much. But we, on a regular basis, get a handful of people a month that stop by and either got married there in the past and would like to do photos, or ask if they can use our property for an upcoming wedding. So we are getting the bed and breakfast rooms. There's just 2 on the property in the house, and we're getting those ready right now. And we are hoping that because of all of the Airbnbs in the area, it's not going to be much of a viable business for us with all the competition. So we're hoping to add events to the business plan and work with the town to figure out a way to possibly do that.
Okay, so before I open up questions to the board, I would at least like to have you take a look at the criteria for the use variance. So Susie, if you could pop that up. Okay. So there's use variances and area variances. Use variances are far more difficult to approve than area variances, largely due to the criteria that you need all 4 of them. It's not or, it's and. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Area variance, it's a balancing act. If you take a look at the number 1 for the reasonable return, is substantially is demonstrated by competent financial evidence. It's a big hurdle. And as I'm looking at your submissions, I don't see any financials. I don't see any kind of, we can't use the property as the code permits us to use it
Okay,
for.
yeah,
So you have some time, because we have the county that we're still waiting for them to let us know what they think about it.
okay,
I'll give you a heads up. If the county decides to say, we're recommending denial of the variance, the board then has to, normally it's to grant the variance, whether it's use or area,
Right.
a majority, simple majority. So we're 5, so that would be 3.
okay,
However, if the county planning board says, we're recommending a denial, the law requires us to, if we're going to grant it, by a supermajority. So there's 3 plus 1.
okay,
It's 4. So the hurdle now is even higher.
right,
If you have any questions about that, I certainly can answer
Okay.
them for you. But if you're not sure, because sometimes applicants will ask us what sounds like legal advice. We can't do that.
okay,
Go talk to an attorney, especially an attorney that's well-versed in municipal laws, zoning, land use. And I'm pretty sure any attorney who is well-versed in that will tell you that's a high bar. It's difficult. We can try and figure some things out, but you have to give us the facts to work with. We can't guess
okay,
at it.
yeah,
Okay?
right.
All right. So with that, I know I already told Fred I was going to ask him too many questions. Do you want to go last, Fred, or do you want to, he's got a little, of course, want to circle back?
I have one comment.
Yes,
Can the entrance to this be off Valentine Road?
I'm sorry.
Not County Route 9, but Valentine for the event?
There is a gravel driveway on the Valentine side of the property that was there when we bought the property.
And you would expect to use that?
We hadn't thought about it because the County Road 9 entrance is so convenient, but it is possible to use that side, yes.
Okay. That's all I have at the moment.
Okay.
Matt, questions?
You know, I echo what Mike said. I don't have much to ask about other than just, you know, if you can either, if you want to address, you know, the 4 items or, you know, part of the code, as I look at it in the use cases that I've seen here on the board in my years here, to Mike's point, it's a hard bar. So I look at what was submitted and I look at the 4 questions here. I don't see where any of them would be met, at least with the data that's been provided. So that's kind of what we'd be looking for. Right? I mean, it's really,
Yeah,
this is really a situation like, we're going to go out of business if we can't have this.
yeah.
Right, and I don't know if, it doesn't sound like, again, from the application, that's where you're going. It'd be great to have it as part of your business plan. You know, again, whether it's, you know, is the hardship self-created or not? I mean, so if you could, whether you want to now, or to Mike's point, I'm okay if we would just want to wait and you want to go back and gather your thoughts or seek counsel or someone and put that together. But it,
Yeah, as I mentioned, you know, we're in the beginning phase of this, and when I spoke to a couple of people in the town, they said, this would be the starting point for me, to get this information into you guys and start here. So I can certainly go back and provide more information.
Sure. I did have a question for Adam regarding bed and breakfasts. So obviously bed and breakfasts are allowed in R2, in R1. They're allowed to serve meals to residents. How would this be any different? And I did read your letter. Where did this kind of cross the line to needing a use variance?
Well, so a bed and breakfast limits to 4 rooms.
Okay,
Okay, so there's a people quantity issue right there.
okay,
And this is more of a commercial use in a residential district. This is in addition to, you have parking requirements,
okay.
lighting, safety, all that
Right.
stuff. So it crosses the threshold of a residential
Just a
use. and then-
secondary okay.
And then a bed and breakfast, which is permitted in the R2 district with, you know, a large list of criteria that, you know, Melanie's been compliant with, but you're past the threshold.
Okay.
You know, so it's more small, focused type of situation, transient stay. Okay?
Okay, thank you. I'm all set for now.
Larry, questions?
Have you held any events there since you purchased it?
No, just family. Yeah, we've had family reunions. Mhm.
I'm fine, thank you.
Leah, questions?
You mentioned that the previous owner used the barns for venues, and you said now you can't because they're not up to code and...
So when I bought the property, I came into Victortown and I spoke to Al, who I believe is retired now, and he had said to me that she did not have permission to use the barns because they were never looked at by the town to be safe for events. So I did a little research and found out that there were a lot of things that go into that. That's why I was mentioning the tents versus using one of those structures, because they're historic barns. They're not suitable for public events. And so we were just trying to figure out a different way to make a living doing this business. Right.
And right now, your business just has 2 rooms to let for the bed and breakfast.
Yes, so we have had Tom and Bob from Victor in to help us with getting all of those rooms ready for the bed and breakfast part of the business. And we are just about to finish up all of the punch list of the things that they wanted us to do and have them come back. So, yeah, those are being prepared as we speak, yeah.
Okay, that's all for now. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Okay, so in addition to what Adam had said, if it doesn't make sense, I think I would ask a few more questions, but I think you get it. It's if the activities that were occurring on the property were just for those tenants, residents,
Right.
that would be fine. But to expand it beyond for people that don't stay there
Right.
is, as Adam said, over the threshold, is beyond, and you're going to need a use variance. The other piece, the memo that Adam gave us, is there are uses that are not permitted for home occupants, restaurants, kennels, scrap salvage, laundries, nursery schools, nursing home, plumbing and electrical shops. Well, I think that the one that stands out to me the most is restaurants. It's a service industry.
Right.
Well, B&B is a service industry, but that also shows the intent of the code is really just for the B&B, just for the occupants, those kind of activities.
Okay.
So you got some homework to do if you want to continue on and pursue it, to have events beyond and for those guests that don't stay there,
Right.
okay? You want to comment on that, or you want to think about it and come back, certainly, because I think we have some people that may want to speak for or
Yeah,
against.
yeah,
would do
no,
that next.
like I said, we're in the beginning phases of this, and I can get that information together and talk to council and see where we can go from here.
Okay, great. You'll have an opportunity. Sometimes there is banter between the people who want to speak for or against the application
Right.
and the applicant. We don't allow that. The questions are asked to us. If we deem them appropriate, we'll give you an opportunity to respond to it, okay?
All right, thank you.
With that, does anyone want to speak for or against the application? Come on up, tell us who you are, and if you would, for or against.
Good evening. My name is Jonas Kloiber, and I live at 6730 Springdale Court, so immediately behind. And I also have a letter that I would like to give to you from the immediate neighbor, Scott Pryor and Sue Pryor. They were not able to make it tonight, so they gave us a letter, and we'll put that into
The record.
the record. Thank
Right.
you. I was at a loss of words.
It's okay.
I'm not going to replay a lot of what all of you covered because that's in our letter. I guess a few points that I would just go over using the exhibits that are available. If you can go to the next one, that would be great. So the driveway on the far side, there's a conservation easement there. So if you're going to use that driveway, I would have to assume that that would have to be reviewed. We would also point out that on our property, which we have an exhibit for that we will submit, is former wetlands, and that runs north by east into where the parking lot is, and not exactly sure where that ends on the other side of that property line, but I'm assuming that runs right through that area as well. It is former wetlands, but I would assume that that would trigger some sort of environmental study as well. And on the application, one of the things on the application was, no, there's no impact to the environment. Between the conservation easement and the wetlands, I would have to assume that that would need to be checked. In addition, the parking lot that is there is 30 cars. And just doing, granted, maybe a high number, because in the application, it was talking about events between May and September, but not potentially every weekend. But if it's 30 cars, 44 events, that's 1,300 cars, basically on the corner of County Road 9 and Valentine Road. If you have that, you're looking at 600 to 700 cars on the corner of Valentine Road and County Road 9. I would assume that would trigger some sort of traffic study as well. In addition to the points that you had raised with regards to triggering hardship and proving if it's self-induced, what we're also going to submit is what was it for the MLS with regards to speaking to the bed and breakfast when it was sold. It's 6 bedrooms, 2 barns that could be used for rental. No idea what's being done today, but it goes to the point of the financials. From our perspective, it looks and sounds, the application looks and sounds more like a commercial venue than it does just a straight events type of bed and breakfast, 4 or 5 people having a wedding. So the other area of concern that we then have as well is, I think you were touching on it from the code perspective, which is if it became an events venue, then what happens to the parking lot? If you go back to the previous, actually, I could just leave it there. I'm going to point.
There's actually a pointer on the podium. It's, yep, there's a laser pointer.
Ooh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Ooh, I love laser pointers. There we go.
Yeah, and just make sure you're talking in the microphone for me.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep. So we live right here. Short version is we live right here. Half of our livable space is on the back side of our house, which is pretty much right on top of the parking lot. So as people are coming in and out, assuming that it ends at 10 o'clock at night, what does that look like? How do those parking lots, how do people exit out of that parking lot between 8 and 10? And going back to the traffic points that we were making earlier, it's assuming only 30 cars if it's a wedding, fine, everyone comes in. But what if it's a graduation, retirement party, whatever it may be? Those are more transient events, right? You're not going to have 30 people that show up. There could be 70 people that show up that are coming in and out of there during that event. And then along those lines, the other question that we have that's in our letter is that what happens when there's overflow? There's 30 cars with 50 people. You have Mary Bluebird Haven across the street, and you have the Monkey Trail trailhead that sits on conveniently right there where we live too. That's on the other side of our property. So how is that being monitored? And it's not an
I just
expectation.
want to just stop, you
Yep.
said right there a couple of
Yep.
times. You're to the south of,
To the south, we're right here.
okay, great,
Yep.
go ahead,
Yep.
keep going.
And it's not about, like, from the bed and breakfast or the applicant being able to, police those areas. We're looking at this more of just, there's overflow, what happens? I think that's about it. Did I leave anything out? Not to replay everything, I'm not going to recover the ground that you guys just covered, because we've already talked about that.
Let me
as
ask you
well.
something, how long have you
Sure.
lived there?
We have lived there for 12 years.
Right, and since that time, have you noticed anything different, or how would you describe the current use? Can you hear them?
Yes, I mean, for us, like, it's a neighborhood, right? You can hear people, and that's perfectly normal neighborhood stuff. Whether it's our neighbors over here in the pool, or
Well,
Chamberlain's one.
I'm sorry, I'm
Yep.
speaking of the B and B,
Yeah,
how they're
that's what I'm gonna
currently
get to,
using
right,
it.
yep. And so we can hear west of us, and then to what would be the south of us. They had a family party, which was perfectly fine, we could hear that, right? And normal neighborhood noise.
Right.
One of the things that was actually, thank you for reminding me, because it was the other thing that we have in both ours and the prior's letter is a wedding event with 50 people. If those of you are familiar with that area, Friday, Saturday nights, once you get into 7, 8 o'clock at night, even in the summertime, you will have traffic on the road, but it's pretty quiet outside of normal neighborhood sound, and the sound carries. So while the wedding itself is not, it may be an intimate event, but it's not going to be quiet, whether it's a wedding or a graduation party or whatever it may be.
How about the previous owner? They mentioned that they also had parties in the
Yeah, we had
parks
just-
and such, so
yep.
were you aware of those?
Oh, yeah,
Did you know-
absolutely.
Were there complaints submitted, was,
Yes, no, we never submitted any complaints, but when we had moved in 2012, there was a couple of, I guess, weddings that had happened after that point in time, and then it had stopped. And then we had actually spoken to her, and the previous owner, she had said that the town had told her she should stop doing it because she was having it in the barn and it wasn't allowed. So it was,
how many people would you say were at those events?
I don't know, I mean, it was loud.
A
like
similar
Yeah, it was like,
size?
I mean, probably the parking was maybe not quite as much, but it seemed that way. I will say at the time, our children are now older, but they were smaller, so that was like a very great experience to go through as well. But like, yes, it's not outrageous, but it's loud, right? Yep.
Anyone else? Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep, I'll give you my.
Anyone else want to speak for or against? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Caroline Pisani. I live at 6761 Springdale Court, which is 3 houses off of County Road 9 opposite Jonah. I have been witness to events with the prior owners for weddings, and there'd be 30, 40 chairs on the property, and Of course, the event was in the barn, and you can hear it in the summertime late at night. My concern is the amount of traffic and the parking, as County Road 9 has become extremely busy in the 17 years that I've lived in Springdale Court, and I think it would cause a tremendous hazard to children, small children. We have a lot of small children still on the street that ride their bikes up and down. And it's very difficult for us, as people that live on the street, to get out of Springdale because the traffic is increased tremendously in 17 years. So I'm really concerned about the traffic, and I'm concerned about the noise, and I'm concerned about being a commercial event, not an intimate event. And people, we all know people like to party, and things get out of hand, and I don't need that kind of, I moved up here to be quiet, and not to have, I'm not against anybody making a living, believe me. I understand their point, and I understand our point, but I just don't think the area that the B&B is in dictates to have that kind of venue, because you'll never know what kind of venue is going to be there until it happens. And I'm really concerned about the traffic and the safety of getting out of the street and the noise. I mean, it's a quiet neighborhood, and I like to keep it that way. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak for or against the application? Come on up. Tell us who you are, where you live.
Good evening. Mark Chamberlain, 6750 Springdale Court, which would be about here on the map.
You're, again, south of,
South of.
okay. Go ahead.
So the concern that I have is, should the variance be accepted, how do the terms of the variance get monitored to ensure that it's correct? And what recourse would we have if, for some reason, that monitoring of the variance was not adequate and the parties were more people, louder than, and it did start to become a problem? I'm not suggesting it will be, but I would want to understand what that would be. So having lived in the house for 19 years this year, we also experienced infrequent events at the property. Probably I could count on one hand how many in a calendar year. And those were loud, the sound did travel. If you were out on your deck or in your garden in the evening, it wasn't great, but it was very infrequent. So for the fact it was infrequent, we were good neighbours and it was okay. If that frequency was to increase and the type of the parties was the same, that would become a problem, I think. It would become a problem to me, and it would be a problem to my family as well. So it's less about the objection, it's more about, if it was to be granted, how would that actually be enforced to make sure it didn't become a problem to the neighbours, and what recourse would the neighbours then have after the variance had been granted?
Okay, so the answer to your question, it's going to be the same for whether there is a variance or not. The code needs to be complied with. If a resident feels that someone is not using their property in accordance to the code, you certainly can give the code enforcement officer a call. And they'll go out and look at it and see if and how they're complying with the code. If not, applicant will come in, ask for variance, or cease and desist. You also have a remedy of calling the sheriff's department, say, it's too loud over there. There's noise ordinances, and you can use a remedy that way. So if there's a variance, whether use or area, it's an exception to the rule. The rule says you shall use the property this way, you cannot use it that way. If the applicant comes in and says, well, gee, I'd like an exception to the rule, variance, we take a look at it. If it's granted, the exception is granted just for that property. Or if it's not, then they can't do that. Right. That answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Great.
No further questions.
You're done? No more
Yeah.
questions?
No, thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak for or against the application? Okay. Adam, before I forget, could we do some research on the I guess, question about a conservation easement issue in the wetlands. Can we locate that for the next meeting to see if that's an issue, and we can take a look at that?
Yeah, I think as the plan stands, it's not an issue, but somebody suggested, I think Fred suggested possibly using that side entrance off Valentine, then it would become an issue, and if the use variance was to be granted, they're gonna need site plan approval from the planning board, so that would be more of the time when easements, setbacks, parking, all of those requirements would be more scrutinized. But I can look into
Right.
what's on the property currently and what the language is for that conservation easement, as well as that gravel drive and how that impacts that.
Great, thank you. I have a question for you. If you want to come back, certainly have an opportunity to respond what the comments were. If you don't, then so be it. The question I had for you is, your application is requesting hosting of periodic events. Periodic is relative. So could you put a number on it? Let's say if we're looking at the summer months, if we go from Memorial Day to Labor Day, how many events would you think you would be having?
I mean, we're thinking probably 6 to 8 at most.
During that time span?
Mm-hmm.
And what about then from Labor Day to Memorial Day?
Labor Day to Memorial Day wouldn't be possible because it's an outdoor event.
Okay, so
Right.
if it's granted and the board decides then to limit the range of the time from Memorial Day to Labor Day to a maximum of whatever the number is, that's a possibility. There's also a possibility that the board then reviews all the facts and data that they have in front of them, and the board may say, we're not granting the use variance here. So
Okay.
I don't want to get your hopes up in saying that that's what we're looking for, but
Right.
putting a number on what periodic means to you helps us what you mean by that.
Right, and I understand, I want to address my neighbors that, I understand that I would be nervous too if this was my neighbor and you think that these people are going to have, every Friday and Saturday night, raucous weddings. And, that's not our intent, and we are hoping to do this supplementally to our bed and breakfast business in order to make it a viable business. So it's just something we're looking at in a way to make an income. So, we certainly wouldn't want to burden our neighbors with events every single weekend. And it wouldn't work for us either as a family because we use the house for a large family as well.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or comments? We're all good for now? Okay. So you understand what's happening. County Planning Board needs to give us their opinion.
Okay.
The next meeting would be in
It's
March.
March 4th is our next meeting, following the county planning board meeting on February 14th.
Is that going to give you enough time to get the rest of the materials to us?
I believe so.
If not, just let us know, and
Okay.
we can always switch to the next meeting.
When is the next meeting, did you say,
So
Amber?
the meeting following the county planning board is March 4th. The meeting following that one of ours would be April 1st.
Okay. Okay,
All right? Questions, comments, concerns? You're good to go?
good to go.
Good. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else before the board? Hearing nothing, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thanks so much.
And my